Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today, I'm joined by Nicole Walter from Walter814, who's going to be talking about data and what you should look at when reviewing your marketing and how that will affect your campaign going forward. Before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping. If you have a question, you can go ahead and type it into the question box, and we will have a Q&A at the end with Nicole. Be sure to type your questions there. If you have any questions, you can always contact me. My information is right there on the screen. I got my phone number and my email there. And also, don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our weekly Monday Minute newsletter, where we put the latest Cornerstone carrier and industry updates. All right, without further ado, I'm going to toss it over to Nicole.
All right, hello everybody. I'm going to show my screen here. I'm Nicole Walter. I put owner and ad assassin at Walter814. Google Analytics and digital analytics and digital marketing in general has become more and more complicated over the years in amazing ways, and it can do some really great, amazing things. But I think sometimes small business owners or even medium and large size business owners could just stand a little bit of explanation, even at a sort of higher level. So that's what we're going to do here today. So let's start with what is digital analytics. A lot of business owners have a website, and they know that it's important to have a website. They know people interact with their website, but that's pretty much where that ends. So digital analytics gives you all of the answers behind what are people doing, how are they getting to your website, what are they doing once they're there, and is that turning into actual sales or dollar return for your business. So I started just by making a definition of digital analytics, what it means to me, and then breaking that into parts. So really it's about collecting and measuring online information. And then the biggest part of that to me is following that with analysis, and then determining next steps. So you have to have all four of these parts in order to get data, get reliable data, and then figure out what you're going to do with that data. So we have collection, measurement, analysis, and determination as our parts. But usually the question I get first is, what am I going to get from data analytics? So as we go over how we're going to collect this information, you can find that most of the time you're going to incur some kind of cost along the road. Either it's from your collection method, or it's from time that you put in or pay that you put into an analyst to pull out those good insights and next steps. So before you put everything in, what are you actually going to get out of it is usually the question. So the why behind all analytics, not just digital, but all analytics, is insight. You need insight into your website's ability to guide your customers. So how are they getting to your website? Once they're there, how are they interacting? And is it ending in return for you? Websites have evolved over time. In their earliest days, it was just a dump of information, and nobody really thought through, how am I going to put this into my sales funnel? And nowadays, it's expected that to be the primary use of your website. So we need to be thinking all the way through, how is this connected to my sales funnel? Am I getting return? With data analytics, you're going to see how people interact, not only with your website, but with various online properties. So you might have an app that people can use, or you have social media pages or other what's called channels. So that could be your LinkedIn page, your Google Ads account, your marketing push that you've done before that still leads people to your website. You have all of these different bits of output that go out to the general public with intent to bring customers back to you. And your digital analytics can really show you if that's working and how that return is coming in. And that's really this third bullet here of your marketing and outreach return. That's really the top of mind reason for having your website. and then optimizing your website. So that leads all to the potential ability to analyze this data and then determine next steps. So let's look at how-to of Google Analytics. We don't really have time for a step-by-step approach today. I am going to have webinars in the future that are going to be taking a step-by-step approach to setting up Google Analytics. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to me and I can give you that information. But we're going to take a deeper look at those 4 parts of analytics and even give you some tips for each of those. So the first part that we had was collection. Really, the answer to collection right now is Google Analytics. Unless you are a company that is pretty much enterprise level or has enough of a marketing and analytics team that has, dedicated developers on staff. Companies like Kroger, for instance, have multiple floors of developers just running their data analytics connections. They can be volatile, especially when you have as much information as Kroger has coming in. They have millions of users on their site a day. They have thousands of products, even variations of each product, prices for each product. They have a massive online enterprise to run. So that takes dedicated developers to be there and making sure everything's working correctly minute by minute. But with a company that isn't at that level, usually what you're going to find is you're not going to gain any value by paying for expensive options. The 2 big paid for players in the game are Adobe Analytics. Just to have a conversation with them and get Adobe the ability to be onboarded, so that's outside of paying your developers, you're looking at 6 figures just for that introduction to it. Now you have to get it implemented and you have to be able to run it correctly. Another one, which is a little bit less costly, is HubSpot. But in the times that I've worked in both Adobe and HubSpot, I find that HubSpot really isn't necessary for the average small or medium-sized business owner. HubSpot can connect a lot of things and it has a lot of processing power once it's set up correctly and everybody understands how to use those tools. But as far as just solid data analytics connection and analysis, Google Analytics is going to work for the bulk of business owners. And it's a free tool, so you can simply create an account online. So you can go to analytics.google.com. You'll sign in with a either Google hosted or Google verified email and be able to set up an account at absolutely no cost to you. You then have to connect that to your website or your app. There are simple steps to follow, and I did include a link here in case anybody needs that support page for setting up and connecting Google Analytics. But of course, feel free to reach out to me. I help people do this every day, just as part of my free consulting that I do. I do have one, which is going to turn into 2 Walter814 pro tips. So first is even a Google recognized pro tip of please use Google Tag Manager. This is a container tool. So all this code does is sit on your website and then hold other bits of code. So you're going to have a code to set up Google Analytics. You're going to have a code if you want to set up your Facebook conversions. You're going to have a code for all of these different points of data. Google Tag Manager can hold all of these bits of code that you set up. And that way your website only has to run one code in order to run all of those. So that keeps your site code clean, easy to review and look at, but most importantly, running efficiently and has your website with faster load times, which as you may know is incredibly important for both SEO and SEM. So SEM is your paid for marketing, like Google Ads or Facebook ads. Those are big factors for rank to have efficient load times. My second sort of side pro tip is as you're setting up these various accounts, including Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics, please set it up with a email that is specifically for this use. So for example, at Walter814, We are technically an agency. We get access to various Google Analytics and Google Ads accounts. We've set accounts up for people. We've set up our own accounts. Every single one of those connections is set up through an email called production@Walter814. That way, if me as the owner gets sick, or heaven forbid something else happens and I'm out for long periods of time, my team knows that they can get to the connections that they need by logging into that. And there are specifically chosen managers that know how to access that. If we were to ever sell the company, for example, which happens every day with companies, that identity would go with the company. It's owned by the company. So we would never have a time at which we are trying to log into an account and say, oh, I don't even know who owns that. That's a problem I help my clients solve every single day. So right when I onboard a new client, the very first thing is we have to get accesses to your currently existing accounts. Sometimes that step can take me quite a bit of time, because if your Google Analytics account was set up by an intern 5 years ago, we may or may not be able to get readily access to that, and there's a long process to get that. So just to save your headaches down the road, use a company founded email that isn't technically owned by anybody. So our next step was measurement, and there's a big warning around measurement right now that Michael Scott's gonna help us draw some attention to. That is pretty much what's going on with the measurement transition right now in Google Analytics. So the original form of Google Analytics was called UA, or Universal Analytics. And for lots of reasons and lots of advancement and more processing power, Google's transitioning right now to GA4. GA4 does have an insane amount of processing power and can really track things that UA just wasn't able to, just because the data didn't even exist when UA was invented. However, this is turning out to be a highly manual process. So anyone on the call right now that might have Google Analytics set up on your website, if you haven't logged into it recently, you might not have noticed that you need to take some steps to transfer from UA to GA4. This will not be an automatic process. And as of July 1st of this year, you will lose all of your UA data if it's not transferred. What I'm finding is it's not incredibly user-friendly to get those accounts transferred over. It's not like one simple button click, it's multiple. The conversions that you have set up may or may not be able to be transitioned into GA4 the way that you have them. So you might have to set up new events in the GA4 fashion. You're going to need new tags to connect everything, new tags in Google Tag Manager. So there's quite a few steps to getting it transferred over. But we can stay calm, and you can get a Google service agent on the phone if you're lucky in order to help you do that. Or you can reach out to somebody like me if you're having some problems doing that. But as you are walking through measurement, there's a few key points that you have to keep in mind. So just setting up the account and putting it on your website is only the first step. That step is going to do more of a broad raw data pool. So this is all the data possible to be pulled in through Google Analytics. The first step there is to create views of that data. So those views are going to be subsets of the data that's collected that is going to have filters applied. The first and foremost filter that most people like to use is to filter out as much bot traffic as possible. If you don't do that, you're going to see that no matter who owns what website, you get like 4 major centers in the US as traffic sources. And those will show up as specific cities like Ashland and others. And someone like me has done a lot of research into these. I've looked into all the top ones, and what it ends up being is either a Google server hub that they're sending their auto crawlers out to read websites and crawl them. I'll especially see these sorts of crawlers in website traffic for a newly launched website or a new refresh of a website. They sort of auto go out and crawl all the information on there so Google can better understand what your website is. And another one that does that a lot is Amazon. So they have auto crawlers on just about every website out there at some point. So you'll see that these 4 major geographic centers tend to have a lot of website from them. You could filter those out because that's not really data you want to be assessing. It's not a possible client. It's not even a real human that's doing that sort of visit. So you're going to want to filter that out. Other things you might want to filter out include your own internal traffic. So as I said, the point of data analytics is to make sure that the people coming to your website are correct for your consumer base, that they're able to complete some sort of touch point with you and get them into your sales funnel. So if you're looking at people who are never going to be part of that sales funnel, that's data you should remove. So if you're visiting your website, if your web developer is visiting your website often, as they probably should be, or even your own sales team, if they're visiting your website, you're going to want to remove all of that. And there's definitely filters in there to do that. I would say everyone should have at least one added view, if not more. Sometimes I like to just go ahead and set up 2 or 3 for those various filters, and then have another one just for testing. And that way, if we ever have a new idea of, I wonder what this is, maybe we should test, this filter or applying this change, I can put that in that view. And if we find out that it didn't quite work the way we thought it was going to, it hasn't affected the views that we're already using. The second big measurement tip is design your events. So events are actions as determined by you as having some sort of value. They can be just about any user event. It could be a click, a page view, a button click, a form fill, pretty much anything they can do on the site, or combinations of things they can do on the site. So if I see page number 1 and then I see page number 3 in that order, and that's meaningful to me as a business owner to know if people have done that, I can set that up as an event. The second part of setting up events is defining which ones should be conversions. So that's number 3. So once you've notated in the system, these are events that are important to me and my business, maybe some of those, but not all of them, actually lead into that sales funnel or lead to a dollar value. If some of them do, such as a form fill or a click to call you, you can specify those as conversion actions. That way they become incredibly shareable with Google Ads. So you could put those into the Google Ads platform. Once they're in there, you can assign values to those. And that's where a lot of power really takes place. So putting a value on a conversion, especially with an account that has done some learning and knows what it's doing, can really take your bid strategy to the next level. So if I'm running a Google search or display campaign, you're bidding on each and every impression that you show up for, and you're paying for that. The algorithms do have the ability, when given enough information, like these conversion values, to change their bid based on the individual user. So these algorithms are highly advanced. They know that user, what other websites they've seen, what their seasonality might be, what else they've searched, so that it has the ability to signal to them, this person is early on in their research cycle, so they might not be worth bidding as much for at this time. Or they've been researching for the last couple of days, they're probably ready to go ahead and buy that piece of furniture. We're willing to bid more to get in front of them right now because they're more likely to buy from you right now. So adding those conversion values really takes it a step forward in getting that full ROI. Probably don't need to see this again. Okay, so our next part is analysis. So you can do all the wonderful work of getting the data collected and making sure that you're measuring exactly what you want to be looking at. But unless you take the time to go in and review that information, you're not going to be able to do much with it. This is really where the worth of a business analyst comes in. You can hire one in staff, you can learn enough to be one and be your own advocate, or you could hire an agency like Walter814 or one of the various other ones to analyze your data. But first, you're going to want to make sure that that data analyst is prepared to give you the right kind of insights that are actionable. So first, that person has to understand the data set that they're looking at. There's multiple measures, multiple factors. They're going to have to be able to go in and understand how the events were set up, what sort of information is actually being tracked, and make sense of all that. And then you're going to want them to understand your business, your goals, and what you want your outcome to be, what you're looking for at this time. What are your goals for this year? That's something that cannot be replaced by a machine. So AI has come a long way. I use AI for bits and pieces of my daily life. I've had it write emails for me. I've had it, um, you know, write different parts of different presentations I've put together. But it's never the complete answer for me. And that's mainly because your relationship with your customers and how people function, even in their digital lives, is largely ruled by human emotion. AI has completely no capacity to understand human emotion. If it did, we'd be in a Terminator situation and we'd be in some trouble. So I'm pretty thankful that it doesn't know that. But you're going to need a human reaction at some point to determine what course of action is actually best for your customers and for your business in order to react properly. Um, and another part of that is this analysis should be ongoing and it needs to be regular. I see that monthly is usually the way to go. Maybe quarterly might be the way to go if you have an extremely long sales cycle. But you're going to want something in place quite regularly. And that's going to develop a deeper understanding of the types of growth. I always analyze what has been implemented in that month that might be impacting what we're seeing in the data. So many insights won't even become clear until you have longer running trails of data, especially year over year data. If your business is highly seasonal to where you see a lot more sales in the spring months or maybe 1 month in the fall, or maybe it's, around holidays in December, you might already have some basis of understanding on that, but your digital analytics can give you a deeper, better understanding and a full plan to use that information. And one example I've seen just recently is I've had a client that's now been with me for over a year. So we're now getting that year over year data to compare to. For the whole first year, I did have conversations with them. I did learn their business and their goals. I never thought I would know this much about heavy machinery, oils, and industrial fluids, but now I do. They were giving me a lot of information that at the time I just had to trust. This wasn't, a business that I founded and built. So they said from day one, we sell the most in November. That's our biggest month. That's what's most important to us. That's where we want to put most of our marketing efforts. At some point, especially when I'm new to the project, I have to say, okay, this is your business. I trust you. I understand that. Once we got past that first year, I was able to look back on that data and say, I do see that you sell a lot in November. You're not wrong. However, from your data analytics and your traffic patterns, I can see that if we actually would have put those marketing efforts 2 months earlier and spent a lot of money there, your customers are going through a heavy research cycle. This is an industrial company, so they're not clicking to buy right then and there. What they're doing is they're going through a sales research cycle, putting together a budget, presenting it to their boss, getting it approved, and then purchasing in November. I could see all of that trail within the data analytics and through their website traffic. So after we had that information, we were able to push this year that data a little bit sooner on seasonality and see much more return for each of their heavy seasonal periods. And then our final part is determination, which I thought Nemo summed up pretty well. So that's the point of determination. So now what? They did all that great work to get out of the dentist office, across the street, made it through the red light. They collected their data, they measured it, they got all the way there. So now what? Even if you've analyzed your data, if you don't have somebody in a position to say, here's some things we can do, here's some insight about what happened, here's what we can do in the future, you're not going to have the so now what, which is really the point of all of this, why you put in the time, the effort, and possibly some money into doing all of this. There's usually two big buckets that digital data is going to lead to, because you are looking at website data and the various channels that interact with your website. It's probably going to be website process and improvements. So through your website traffic, through how your clients are interacting, what your website visitors are doing once they get there, you can see if they're hitting a wall. Maybe they're having a technical problem. Maybe they're having a problem with the pages being too long. People's attention spans are so short nowadays. There's a perfect amount of information to give them. Not too long, not too short. Sometimes you have to play both fields and give concise, bolded information for people like my husband who barely like to scan things, or people like me who would sit there and read it for 10 minutes. I want to make sure I have all the information. So there's different website updates that can happen. You can identify any troubleshooting that has to happen through the data as well that you might not know about. But then you can also apply those to process improvements within your business. So if we find that customers are coming in, they're getting to all the right pages, they have wonderful engagement, but you're not getting any form fills, maybe there's a technical issue with the form, maybe the form is too long. That's one thing to do. Maybe they're not finding the form readily enough. So those are some website changes. Once they're finding that form, maybe they're filling it out 2 or 3 times. Maybe you're getting too much interaction. Maybe they're getting confused. That's going to be a process improvement. So if you fill out a form and it just sort of reloads the page and clears the form, are you 100% sure that that company got your form? Maybe not. And if it's something incredibly important, you might feel a little bit of anxiety around, I don't even know if they got my information. So maybe in that instance, you need to put up a thank you page. Thank you for filling out the form. Set up some appropriate expectations. We'll be reaching out to you in 24 to 48 hours or whatever your process looks like. Another bucket of information that can come out of website analytics is changes to your marketing strategy. So this can be simple. It can be on the digital platforms that are, funneling into your website, or it can be outside of that as well. So more straightforward, if you're running Google Ads and then you're analyzing your website traffic. One example from one of my clients who sells custom blinds was that there's different times in your life that people buy blinds. So maybe when you first leave your parents' house and you're going to that college dorm, or you've bought your first house as a young person or a young couple, you need to buy blinds. Those are not typically the people buying custom wood blinds. Custom wood blinds are very expensive, cost thousands of dollars. They're looking more for the, Walmart mini blinds. Somebody in the 18 to 24, or maybe even 18 to 30-year-old range might not be looking for the kinds of blinds he's selling. So he might have been spending a lot of time talking to people on the phone, only for them to realize that's not what they were looking for. Instead, he wants more of the advanced adult. So maybe somebody 35 and up, 40 and up, something like that, that's looking for a lifelong investment in their home decor. So if we went to his website and saw that he was getting a lot in this younger bucket from his ads, that's a change that needs to happen. You can make changes in the ads platform in order to shift that. Make your processes more streamlined, make sure you're talking to the right people who are most likely to turn into money now. But also make sure that the money that you're spending on ads is working efficiently for you. You can either exclude complete age ranges from your ads, so you're going to see a dip in your overall website traffic from those ages, or you can tell the algorithm, these people somewhere in the middle, maybe in their late 20s or 30s, they might be looking for this. It's a little bit less likely they might be looking for this though. So we're willing to show ads to them, but maybe we don't want to pay as much for that. That's also a possibility. So that's digital marketing strategy. But also if you have a mailer sent out or you buy an ad in a magazine, if you're presenting a link of your website, you can have either a custom link made for that site. So go to abcwebsite.com/ this publication's name. Maybe you offer, get 10% off. I've seen that in magazines before if you go to this page. Or if you use a QR code, you can build in coding behind that QR code that tells Google Analytics, this person scanned this QR code, they came from this mailer, and that's how they got here. And then you'll be able to analyze external data that's not digital, but they're touching your digital website. So you can then analyze how well or how effective that chain was in your marketing and make some shifts there. There's so much information you could tell where your users are geographically, what zip code they're in, what gender or age range they fall in, or even what affinity buckets they're in. So Google takes all of its site users and it does watch where you've been and what you're doing and what things that you like. So, Mr. Smith might visit your site and he also likes to watch a lot of YouTube videos about fixing his car, or he likes to go to and watch the History Channel on his streaming services. And he really likes that show that fixes up cars. I don't know the name of it. My husband watches it. So we can get an understanding of, as a whole, most of your website users are falling into these specific buckets, and you can really get to understand who your website users and who your customer is on a personal level in a way that you might not have had a chance to before. So I'll leave it at that. We're getting farther into our time. So does anyone have any questions right now?
Yeah, I have a couple. Also, very much appreciate the Buddy the Elf. That's great. Um, yeah, a couple questions. So you mentioned the company, talking about selling their blinds. Health insurance is also very, very specific, where you might be marketing to people who don't need health insurance right now, but you want them to remember to contact you when they do. So it's very much about brand awareness. So
Mhm.
how do you recommend people tailor their website and their marketing and all of that stuff for brand awareness specifically?
Yeah, that's a good question because there's a few different options for that. One that's probably in the forefront of most people's minds that I only partially subscribe to is the idea of individualized landing pages. Um, so I see this with insurance scenarios or with medical scenarios. Sometimes we get people just before they have awareness of what they really need. In that case, you're going to need to identify with them where they're at now. And sometimes a static landing page can work. Um, I usually have trouble because sometimes they have reduced navigation. So if you're gonna send them to a landing page, you can talk directly to their instance um, and how they're feeling now. So typically in that scenario, you might be running a search campaign because they don't really know that they're looking for you when they're looking for you. Um, so one of the scenarios I've run before is like a holistic medicine scenario, or like you said, insurance, where um, they don't quite know what they qualify for yet, or they don't know what medical option is best for them. But they're searching a problem that they're having. Um, I'm always amazed by what people are willing to ask Google as an inanimate object. Um, so they'll bring complicated questions to Google and say, I'm having this problem, I'm in this scenario, what are my options? Um, as long as you're targeting people looking for that, you're going to need to meet them where they're at. So it's saying, you might be in this scenario. I hear you're in this scenario, you're having this problem. You might not know this is the answer. So sometimes you have to lead people into their awareness. Um, So sometimes those landing pages need to be specifically built. I think most of that thought process goes back to who am I reaching? What are they feeling when I'm reaching them? And if I was that person, what would I like to hear? What do I need to know in order to make this decision? I mean, data analytics can definitely give you a lot of awareness around what scenario that might be if you're not 100% clear on that.
Yeah, that's great. How do you feel about the analytics tools that are offered by website creators like Squarespace? I know, like, if you have a website through Squarespace, then they have the option for you to track your analytics. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I've definitely looked in Squarespace. I love working with restaurants. There's so much on digital for them to interact with. So that's usually where I'm working with Squarespace is either in a retail market or like a restaurant retail market, or Toast for that matter is sort of like another option. Um, I've done advanced analytics in Squarespaces like with menus and things. I think their data is absolutely wonderful because you've probably spent a lot of time building out exactly all of your individual sales options. So a restaurant might have 5 appetizers and 10 entrees and 3 desserts. You're going to know who's buying what and at what times of the day. You're going to be able to see advanced seasonality. So they're actually in the point of sale in systems like that. Google Analytics, unless you have an e-commerce site, doesn't really have a lot of insight into your point of sale. And it does take a lot of setting up to get an e-commerce site to work with Google Analytics correctly. So I think exporting that data and using it side by side. So I call that linkage data. I do a lot of manual manipulation in Excel or Google Sheets to where I can export information from Google Analytics, export information from Square, and sort of tie those factors together and really link everything to get a full picture of what's going on.
Okay, great. Is it worth it for me to track my analytics if I have a very small website with only a couple pages?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It was a fad for a long time to have a one-page website to where even all of your actions at the top menu just sent to a different location. All of those locations, even if it's just on one page, can be assigned identifiers to where we know if they're interacting with those menu buttons, where they're going on that page. Sometimes you don't need a very complicated website. If your product is pretty to the point, you know people just want the information and they want it now, you might not need a lot of pages. Maybe you're highly specialized and you don't have 10 service pages to present. That's more than acceptable. But you can still get information for Google Analytics on the pages that I do have. Are they functioning well? Are they giving my users the information that they need? And is it turning into a result?
All right. What parts of my analytics should I look at specifically? I've never done this before.
Oh, yeah, there is a lot, and it's very overwhelming. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be even more overwhelming in July. So GA4, like I said, has a ton of processing power. It can really do some great data collection, especially with apps. However, there's not going to be pre-built reports for you anymore. So in UA, there's pre-built reports. You can go to the geographic traffic patterns, and they give you a map, and you can see exactly where all your traffic's coming from, if that aligns with what you want. You can look at the different age ranges, if that applies to your businesses, if you feel like you're going to hit more severely with a certain age range versus another, or a certain gender over another. Those are all great places to start. Really, you're not going to have the power behind analytics without setting up events and conversions. So I would say definitely prioritize getting those set up. and getting some help setting those up if you need to. Pretty much what I like to take a look at is long-running traffic patterns, though. So a lot of people ask, like, how do I know, especially for sites that are smaller or newer or businesses that are still growing? Oh, I have 1,000 visitors. Is that enough? Is it enough to even analyze? The answer is yes, and you don't need to continually ask, is this normal? Is this enough? Um, when you have enough data, you can compare against yourself, which is really where the power comes in. You can find some information about benchmarks that are very loose out there. GA4 actually makes that a little bit easier because they can segment by industry a little bit better nowadays, but really start with what's most important to your business and your goals. If your goal is to reach more women between the ages of 25 and 34, go look at your genders and your age profile. See if you're lining up with that. Think about how we're going to get there if we're not there yet.
All right. We just have one last question. Are Google Ads worth it for a small business owner with a limited budget?
It definitely can be. I love this question. It's my passion with Walter814. So I have an industry background in agencies. So Walter814 is technically an agency. I try to brand us as the agency that hates agencies for this reason. So I've been in analytics agencies and I've been in digital ads agencies. And what I saw ongoingly was the struggle between the analyst or the campaign manager being dedicated to the client or dedicated to the contract. And those would usually butt heads. So, and usually that's where a lot of cost comes in. So a lot of agencies will bring to you high minimums. I mean, I think the going rate for a campaign at a large agency in Cincinnati right now is as high as $3,000 or more. So that's pretty much the norm, is about $3,000. What you should know about that is most of that is not being spent on the platform. They're only probably spending $200 or $300 a month. So realistically, you can run ads for low spend and still get return. The biggest point there, especially if you're going to run your own ads or want to keep tabs on an independent consultant that you might have hired or an agency that you might have hired, is to make sure that you're buying only the most relevant traffic. So Google is huge. They are 90% of all the website traffic. With that comes a lot of power, but it also comes a lot of blurry gray areas. So if I'm buying for brand awareness, that's where it can get a little bit open. Do I really want to be in front of users of all ages? If not, if I want to specify certain ages, let's cut out those other ones. That's going to save you money. Just refining your audience, deciding who is really in your population, who you really want to get to. The more you cut that in, the more money you're going to save. It might make your individual cost per click increase because you're paying more for the people that are most likely to turn into investment. But when you do that, combined with keeping your geos under control, you can really only spend a few $100s a month and really get great returns. So one big mistake I see is people say, oh, I'm an online company, I could ship anywhere. I'm going to do the entire United States. I almost never have anyone do the entire United States. In order to run an efficient Google Ads campaign with the entire United States, that's when you're going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars in spend. I mean, there are people like Pepsi and Coke spending $1 million in spend or more, millions, to hit the entire United States. Instead, it makes much more sense to look at the geos that are of most advantage to you. So maybe the easiest to ship to, maybe ones that you already have a presence in, or ones that you're slowly starting to build a bigger presence in. Get more awareness in those areas, and then slowly increase from there. So you can definitely keep it simple and spend just a few $100s if you decide to focus in on a smaller geo. I would say one of the geos here locally is called the Cincinnati DMA. So that basically hits the 275 loop and a little bit outside. It touches northern Kentucky a little bit. That for a search or display campaign, you're only going to need to spend $300 to $500 a month. But something like a restaurant where there's tons of people always looking for food, I've spent as little as $100 a month for those. So you can definitely do it as long as you're paying attention to the size of your audience and your geos.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us and for teaching us all you know about digital advertising and analytics. Her information is right there on the screen. If you want to get in contact with her, we've worked with Walter814 for a couple years now, maybe 1 year. I can't remember.
It has to be at least 2.
It has to be at least 2. And they do a great job, and they really help with diluting the information down for people who may not be informed about digital analytics. So I highly recommend getting in contact with them if you need help with that stuff.
Thank you. I'd be happy to have a one-on-one with anyone that has questions or needs help setting anything up as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And if anybody has any questions for her or for me, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to get back to you. This information was recorded, so we'll send out the recording of the presentation later today. And everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.